I've been making content for this channel since 2018. I enjoy video editing and talking, and never expected any of my uploads to get more than a couple hundred views, if that. I don't promote them other than a quick post on social media and sometimes in an appropriate subreddit. So the view count on my Scooby-Doo Mystery Incorporated video really took me by surprise. I'm happy my love of the show resonated with so many people, and I appreciate all the nice comments, although personally I think my Zombie Island Murders video was better. I've read most of the comments, but seldom reply to any, mainly because I get them by email and then forget to respond to them on YouTube until much later, and by then it feels like too much time has passed and it would be a little awkward. Also, there are a lot of them, and many are from people who either simply confirm that they too like the show or want to helpfully point out that Mystery Incorporated is back on Netflix. Thank you, yes. I know it's back on Netflix now. Another thing that's apparent from having an upload scrutinized by so many people is that any mistake will be noticed and someone will point it out. This doesn't change the fact that 3 people were killed by the series' principal antagonist, the evil owl, Professor Pericles. Apparently, Professor Pericles is not an owl. I am my own worst critic. Unless you talk to my kids. So I thought I would address this glaring mistake, and while not exactly defend it, at least explain why I think it was made, and just maybe offer a theory about how I could still be right. Oh, there were some complaints about not having a spoiler warning at the beginning of my video about a show that was almost 10 years old at the time I made it, so spoiler warning. First and foremost, Professor Pericles is absolutely seen as a parrot by everyone else on Mystery Incorporated.
Incredible. Actually, it's quite common for parrots to speak. You see, in the wild, avian voice mimicry functions as a sort of...
It's incredible because it's the first words he's spoken in years. He belonged to those kids who disappeared in the caves.
You mean this was the parrot who belonged to the original Mystery Incorporated?
So why did I think he was an owl when he was so clearly established as a parrot? It might be because I watched most of Mystery Inc. out of order for the first season. My daughter is also a big Scooby fan and started watching this series before me, either in her bedroom or in the living room while I was there at my desk working on my computer. So by the time I got around to seeing the episode that introduced him, Pericles was an established villain, and the idea that he was an owl was already planted in my brain. So in spite of multiple viewings, the conversation where they discussed his species slipped right past me. It's like one of those word puzzles where they have you read a paragraph only to smugly point out how you missed the fact that the word "the" was repeated. But you know what? I wasn't the only one who thought Pericles was an owl. Not only did my wife think so, but some of those in my video's comments felt the same. What was it about Pericles that made some of us mistake his species? Let's look at his physical appearance. He has a large head relative to the size of his body, a small beak relative to the size of his head, his eyes are in front, his tail feathers are short, and he has dull plumage. Here are some animated and real-life owls. Common characteristics include large heads relative to their bodies, small beaks relative to their heads, eyes in front, short tail feathers, and dull plumage. In addition, most of the cartoon owls have little white feathers or tufts of fur on their heads or faces. Now, here are animated and real-life parrots, including an African gray on which Professor Pericles was possibly based. common characteristics include small heads relative to their bodies, large beaks relative to their heads, eyes on the side except for Iago, long tail feathers except for Jose, and colorful plumage apart from the African gray. As traditionally depicted in both real life and animation, Pericles has more in common with owls than parrots. Additionally, owls are significant creatures in Greek mythology, and the most famous Pericles in history was an ancient Greek statesman. This little guy was named Archimedes, another famous Greek from antiquity. This older Disney character was named Professor Owl, and notice how the Grand Duke of Owls here is not only roughly the same color as Professor Pericles, but he also has white fluffy bits on top of his head, and his left eye is impaired. But hey, it was established in the show that Pericles was a parrot, so end of discussion, right? Well, put on your tinfoil hats, because here's my theory how Pericles could still have been an owl. Let's discuss the overarching story of Mystery Incorporated. As we learn late in the series, the town of Crystal Cove and all the events leading up to the finale were manipulated by an imprisoned interdimensional being bent on world destruction. This evil entity used its psychic powers to bring groups of mystery solvers together to find the keys needed to free it from its prison. These groups always consisted of 4 humans and an animal mascot. Why there was always an animal is unclear, but I assume it's because the evil entity finds non-humans easier to directly manipulate as it possibly did with Porto, and definitely later with Pericles. The idea of an intelligence manipulating the evolution of certain people to bring about a desired outcome is reminiscent of the Bene Gesserit from Frank Herbert's Dune novels. Herbert's sisterhood sought to create a super being called the Kwisatz Haderach by manipulating genetic bloodlines via selective breeding. It's possible the evil entity was doing something similar with these animal mascots, albeit less directly and more sporadically considering its limited psychic reach. Easily the biggest hand wave in the entire Scooby-Doo franchise is Scooby's ability to speak. The gang accepts it as normal, as does generally everyone they interact with. This is really nuts the more you think about it, because with few exceptions, almost every other animal featured in almost every Scooby-Doo series cannot speak. Mystery Inc. is no exception, as the only other talking animal was Pericles. Apart from Nova, but she doesn't count because a benevolent interdimensional being was controlling her at the time. Perhaps Scooby and Pericles' ability to speak is a direct result of the evil entity's influence in their lives. It stands to reason these animal mascots manipulated by a powerful interdimensional being would naturally be smarter than typical for their species, perhaps even with the ability to speak. Almost all of the previous mystery-solving groups were shown in silent flashbacks, so it's unknown if their animal companions spoke like Scooby or Pericles, but we never saw anything to rule that out either. Pericles would naturally understand that his ability to speak wasn't normal. He was a genius after all, guided by the evil entity working in the shadows to secure the keys to its freedom. The last thing Pericles would want is to draw attention to himself. He was very patient and capable of Machiavellian scheming. After all, he allowed himself to be imprisoned for years despite how easy it would have been to escape. Pericles knew how to play the long game. Now, if you were an owl with greater than human intelligence and the ability to communicate, how would you disguise this fact? Hiding in plain sight can be a very effective method of concealment, with the added benefit of being right there to influence the actions of others. So what better disguise for a talking bird than pretending to be another bird famous for its ability to mimic human speech? The evil entity's psychic ability could also have helped Pericles by clouding the minds of those around him, making them accept him as a parrot despite clearly looking like an owl. All Pericles would have to do would be to squawk and repeat Ricky's words a few times, and the deception would be complete. As time went by, he could then gradually communicate more and more with the members of the original Mystery Inc. gang who wouldn't even realize they were accepting such an exceptional thing as normal. This would allow Pericles to guide his lesser intelligent teammates to the goal he and the evil entity desired. So yeah, Pericles was definitely an owl. I just realized the teleprompter app I use is called Parrot Teleprompter.